3:14 a.m. June 9th. The Gulf of Oman. The ocean is black, the sky is black, and somewhere in that darkness, a crew of 22 merchant sailors has no idea tonight is about to become the worst night of their lives. The MV Resolute Pioneer, a 65,000-ton crude oil carrier moving at 10 knots, is 3 hours from the Strait of Hormuz, fully loaded. Hull riding low. She is worth $500 million and carries enough petroleum to power a city for a week. On the bridge, the second officer is drinking coffee. Then the radar blips. A single Shahed 361 attack drone, launched from an unmarked fast patrol boat hiding in the shadow of the Iranian coastline, crosses the final mile in under 4 seconds. The crew never hears it coming. The impact tears a hole in the port side, large enough to park 2 pickup trucks inside. The steel doesn't crumple. It peels like a soda can squeezed by a giant fist. The warhead detonates inside the cargo pre-pump room. A shockwave hammers through 3 decks. 2 sailors near the blast are thrown off their feet. One with a fractured wrist, one bleeding from the nose, both with ringing ears. The ship's navigation screen goes dark. The main engine alarm screams. The MV Resolute Pioneer begins to slow. On radar, 6 miles east, 3 more red icons appear. 3 additional drones, low and fast, skimming at 40 feet above the water. They will reach the Resolute Pioneer in under 3 minutes. The tanker has no weapons, no countermeasures, no way to fight back. But 40 miles to the northeast, a different story is already being written. Hold on. Before this gets worse, and it absolutely gets worse, everything you're about to see unfold is a hypothetical scenario, built on real platforms, real doctrine, and weapons that exist right now. This is designed for people who want to understand what modern naval warfare actually looks like. Comment 1 inch below if you want to see how the US Navy answers this. Comment 2 inches if you'd rather stop here. And seriously, if you were the commander watching 3 more drones close in on a burning tanker with 22 lives aboard, what's your first call? Tell me. The USS Hayler, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, picked up those radar contacts the moment the first drone launched. And here's what looks strange from the shore. The Hayler isn't turning toward the burning tanker. She is accelerating away from it, pushing toward 35 knots, her bow throwing white walls of spray into the dark. To the enemy command post on the coast, it looks like retreat. The Americans are running. That misreading is deliberate. It is bait. From the shadow of the coastline, 6 low-profile silhouettes cut into the water, unmanned surface vehicles, sea drones. Each one barely 2 meters wide, riding flush with the waterline, nearly invisible to radar. But packed with 500 pounds of military explosive, they are aimed at the Resolute Pioneer's waterline. One hit near the engine room and the keel floods in minutes. 65,000 tons of crude oil pour into the Gulf of Oman. The environmental catastrophe alone shuts down regional shipping for months. Can you even imagine that scene? 6 ghost boats screaming through the dark, no crew, no conscience, nothing but a target and a timer. At exactly 3 miles out, the lead sea drone makes a hard left turn. 90 degrees, for no reason, then starts spinning in circles, engine hammering uselessly. The second drone veers into a wave. The third stops dead, listing sideways in its own wake. One by one, the wolf pack goes stupid. What just happened? The Hayler, while racing away, never stopped transmitting. Her electronic warfare suite has been flooding a 6-mile radius with broadband digital noise. The satellite signal those drones need has been replaced with a false signal telling their GPS computers they are currently parked in the middle of the Arabian desert. 6 high-tech weapons, 6 floating paperweights. The enemy commander understands the drones are being jammed, and he draws exactly the wrong conclusion. The destroyer must be out of interceptor missiles. He decides to escalate past any countermeasure. He reaches for a weapon that doesn't need a satellite signal at all. At 3:19 a.m., the coastline erupts. A Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile ignites on its mobile launcher and punches vertically into the sky. A 3,000-kilogram spear of steel and rocket fuel. It climbs past 100,000 feet, arcs over the edge of space, then tips its nose toward the ocean and begins the final dive, accelerating past Mach 3. The kinetic energy alone is enough to punch clean through a tanker's hull without the warhead even detonating. But a ballistic missile falling from the stratosphere still needs a final GPS update to hit a moving ship. The seeker needs fresh coordinates from someone close to the target. That's when the second trap reveals itself. 2 miles from the burning Resolute Pioneer, there is a wooden tower, traditional fishing boat, the kind that works these waters every night. But at 3:20 a.m., the camouflage netting over its center drops away. Underneath is a military-grade phased array radar dome and a satellite uplink. This was never a fishing boat. It is a forward targeting station, sitting in plain view for 3 hours, patiently feeding GPS coordinates up to the falling missile. The air drones were distraction. The sea drones were pressure. The missile is the killing blow. The Khalij Fars is now at 60,000 feet, falling, impact in 38 seconds. How do you think the enemy felt at that exact moment, believing they had finally outplayed the most powerful navy in the world? Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Hayler, it is cold. Not the cold of the ocean outside. The cold of recycled air and maximum concentration. The CIC is lit almost entirely by the blue glow of radar screens. Dozens of them stacked and angled, each one painting a different picture of the battle space. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Jenkins, the ship's tactical action officer, stands at the weapons console. She has been on watch for 4 hours. Her coffee went cold an hour ago. She is 34 years old. She has trained for this scenario 600 times in simulation. Her own radar screen is blank. The Khalij Fars is falling at Mach 3, somewhere above the horizon, invisible to every sensor the Hayler carries. The ship's SEPY-1D radar sees nothing. The threat is real. The P-8A Poseidon, orbiting silently at 28,000 feet, 40 miles away, has it locked on infrared, but that data is traveling through a compressed satellite relay, through a data link, across 40 miles of ocean, into Jenkins' console in millisecond packets. If that link drops even for a tenth of a second during the SM-6's terminal phase, the missile loses its eyes. It goes ballistic. It misses. And 38 seconds from now, 22 sailors on that tanker evaporate. Jenkins' hand rests on the fire key. The countdown on her screen reads 31 seconds to impact. The P-8's data feed is green. She needs to fire now, while the SM-6 still has time to climb to intercept altitude. Wait another 6 seconds and the geometry closes. The missile won't make it. But the ship's own radar shows nothing. She is being asked to fire $4 million of interceptor missile into empty sky, trusting a data signal from an aircraft she cannot see, to kill a threat she cannot detect, to save people she cannot reach. A bead of cold sweat runs down her temple. Weapons free. The captain's voice comes over the intercom. Calm, flat. Your call, Sarah. The countdown reads 27 seconds. Jenkins exhales once. Slow. Weapon away, she says quietly, and presses the key. 4 VLS cells blow open in sequence. The first 2 SM-6 Block IA interceptors punch straight up off the deck in a column of white fire, clearing the superstructure and lighting their main engines. Behind them, 2 SM-2 Block 2 IC missiles follow as the second line. The ship shudders with each launch. On Jenkins' screen, the SM-6 track lines arc upward, climbing hard toward an intercept box that exists only in the P-8's data feed, not on anything the Hayler can see herself. For 11 seconds, the CIC is completely silent. The P-8's data stream stays green. The SM-6 receive course corrections mid-flight. Their guidance fins adjusting twice per second. They reach intercept altitude 10 miles above the ocean and lock the falling ballistic missile on terminal seeker. The two objects close the gap at a combined speed of nearly 4,800 miles per hour. The collision is total. To the crew of the Resolute Pioneer 2 miles away, it looks like a small star blinked into existence and exploded, a white flash, then falling sparks, then silence. In the CIC of the USS Hayler, someone lets out a breath they didn't know they were holding. Jenkins doesn't move. She is already looking at the next threat, the Duh. It just watched its master plan vanish in fire, and is now running hard toward the Iranian coast. The Mark 45 5-inch gun on the Hayler's foredeck rotates to bearing 217. The first round out is a Mk 171 guided projectile, a dart shell with microcontrol fins that steer the round in flight. The now zigzags. The shell follows. It hits the engine compartment, detonates inside the fuel tank, and triggers the enemy's own scuttling charges in a single cascading explosion. Radar array fragments are thrown a quarter mile in every direction. The ghost ship is erased from the surface of the ocean in one heartbeat. The sea drones, still drifting, still jammed, still useless, are dealt with methodically. 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lift off the Hayler's flight deck and work through the Wolf Pack with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. Each hit sends a 100-foot geyser of seawater skyward as the drone's own payload detonates. 6 drones, 6 explosions, 8 minutes. The wolf pack becomes debris, but Jenkins is already focused on the coastline. The P-8A Poseidon tracked the Khalij Fars launch back to its origin, a limestone ridgeline with a carved vehicle tunnel, barely visible from satellite imagery because it was built to look like natural rock. After firing the first missile, the enemy began preparing a second. The residual heat trapped inside the tunnel made its opening glow like a searchlight on the Poseidon's infrared feed. The front door to the nest is lit from inside. At 3:29 a.m., 2 more VLS cells on the Hayler blow open. 2 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles climb out, turn west, drop to 60 feet off the ground, and begin threading through coastal valleys at 600 miles per hour. The enemy sees them coming. A mobile SA-15 surface-to-air missile battery that had been sitting in total silence powers up its radar and fires 2 interceptors. At 30,000 feet above the coastline, a pair of A-18E Super Hornets have been loitering in the dark since 1 a.m. The moment the SA-15 radar turns on, one Hornet rolls inverted and releases an AGM-88E ARGM. The enemy radar operator sees the harm signature on his scope. He does the only thing he can, shuts the radar down, goes dark. Too late. The missile has already memorized the GPS coordinates. It follows the address. The SA-15 battery takes a direct hit. 1 truck destroyed outright. The radar van catches fire. 2 enemy crew members sustain blast injuries. The battery is offline. The Tomahawks have a clear path. They bank hard into the tunnel mouth at the last second. The first Tomahawk hits the mobile launcher assembly. The second hits the liquid fuel storage bay behind it. The enemy's own rocket propellant, thousands of gallons staged for the second launch, ignites in a single catastrophic flash. The tunnel exhales a pillar of orange fire 400 feet above the ridgeline. Secondary explosions echo across the Gulf of Oman for 30 seconds. The nest is gone. The second missile will never fly. 3:51 a.m., the Gulf of Oman begins to go quiet. The Resolute Pioneer's damage control team has contained the fire in the pump room. 2 sailors are being treated, fractured wrist, concussions, blast bruising, but the ship is moving again, engine back online at reduced power. She will reach port. The oil will reach the world. One final act of spite. A truck-mounted 57mm shore cannon fires 3 shells at the tanker's stern. A last desperate shot from an enemy that has lost everything tonight. The Hayler's phalanx CIWS wakes up before the shells have traveled 1,000 feet. A stream of 20mm tungsten intercepts all 3 rounds half a mile from the tanker. Fragments fall into the sea. The truck on shore sees the arc of white tracers coming toward them and disappears into the desert without firing again. 4:07 a.m., the MV Resolute Pioneer clears the danger zone. The Hayler takes up escort position 2 miles astern. Above them, the P-8A Poseidon continues its silent orbit, still watching, still invisible, still omniscient. 3 air drones, 6 sea drones, 1 ballistic missile, 1 ghost ship, 1 SAM battery, 1 missile tunnel, all of it gone, in 53 minutes. Before you go, there is one thing about the SM-6 interceptor used tonight that almost nobody fully understands. And it changes everything about how you think about naval warfare. Most missiles work the way you'd expect. The ship spots the target, points the weapon, fires. The missile rides the ship's own radar like a guide wire all the way to impact. The SM-6 was designed to break that rule entirely. When Jenkins fired tonight, the Hayler's own radar couldn't see the Khalij Fars at all. It was hidden behind the curvature of the Earth, dropping from the stratosphere on the far side of the horizon. By every traditional rule of naval gunnery, she was firing into empty sky. The SM-6 doesn't care. Once it clears the ship, it goes autonomous and becomes a listener, connecting in real time to any platform with eyes on the target. The P-8 overhead, a satellite, an F-35 20 miles away. Any platform that can see the enemy becomes the missile's guidance brain. The ship fires, everything else steers. Think about what that does to an adversary's strategy. You can hide your launcher behind a cliff. You can stay below the ship's radar horizon. You can disappear from every sensor on that destroyer, but you cannot hide from the network. And in the US Navy, the network is everywhere. In a modern naval battle, the shooter doesn't need to see you to delete you. Tonight in the Gulf of Oman, 22 merchant sailors went to bed not knowing if they would see sunrise. They woke up to fire and shockwaves and a ship coming apart under them. And 53 minutes later, because a TAO named Jenkins pressed a key while staring at a blank radar screen, because a P-8 held its data link steady at 28,000 feet, because a destroyer pretended to run while never stopping to fight, those sailors are alive. The tanker will reach port. The oil will reach the world. And the crew of the USS Hayler will be back at sea before the sun clears the horizon, because there is always another stretch of ocean that needs watching. That is what American sea power looks like when it operates at full strength. Not loud, not reckless, quiet, exact, and utterly unforgiving when the moment demands it. This crew won't make the news tonight. They never do. But 22 people on a scorched tanker in the Gulf of Oman are breathing because of them. If you were Lieutenant Commander Jenkins in that moment, radar blank, clock at 27 seconds, 22 lives on the line, would you have pressed that key? Tell me in the comments. And here's the question that keeps me awake. If the SM-6 can kill a target it cannot see, guided by platforms miles away, what happens the day an adversary builds the same capability and points it back at us?